I think we can start. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to see everything that you need to know about oil pastels. Right from different types of pastels, paper, sheets, everything out in the market, and a bunch of different basic tools like all the smudging and blending techniques, and a very important single stroke or drawing technique. And at last, we will do a simple scenery with oil pastel and the single stroke technique. All right, let's start with pastels. There's 5. Okay. Yep, cool. Okay, so there's on a broader scale, there's 5 different pastels. So let me show you one by one so you'll know the difference and you'll know what's the best for you or your kids. Let's start with wax pastel. So this is wax pastel. As the name says, it's full of wax and pigments. So now you can see it. It's just wax. Okay, this wax pastel are otherwise known as crayons. Right? It's also a type of pastel, but we can really blend them or smudge them since they do not have any oil binders in it. It's just pigments and hold on, it's breaking. Alright, so it's just wax and pigments. There's no oil binders, so that's the reason we can't really smudge it. And next, oil pastels. They come in 2 different grades. Let's see the difference. So oil pastels will have wax, pigments and oil binders. So that's the reason it allows us to smudge the okay, can see? Yep, so that's the reason it allows us to smudge across the diagrams or blend with colors. Okay, so the student grade, it will have more wax. That means it's more towards wax pastel. It will have less binders. Whereas artist grade, you could see it's more vibrant. The colors are more intense. That means it will have more oil binders than student grade. Whereas Soft Pastel, it will have more chalk than the binders. You could see them. It's more vibrant. The colors are more intense, but it will leave a lot of dust. You can see them. It's very visible here. And the 4th one is hard pastels. It will have more pigments and more binders, but it's not really a popular pastel since it could largely be used only for backgrounds and outlines. And the 5th type is pencil pastels. As the name suggests, it's the pencil form of pastels. It could be used for lines, like drawing fine lines. You could see the difference drawing with a pencil and a normal oil pastel. So that's the reason it's used. Okay, so what's the best pastel for me or for my kid? So obviously wax is not the best. You can take this out. And pencil pastels, you could use it if you want to draw fine lines with them. Else it's not the right choice for you. Hard pastels you could use only for, or largely you could use only for backgrounds and outlines. Otherwise that will be out as well. So out of these 3, student grade, artist grade and Soft Pastel. So I would say, like if you're a little older kid or adult, I would suggest Soft Pastels. This is the most popular pastel that we have, but it will leave a lot of dust. You could see things could easily get messed up if you don't handle it properly. But for small kids, you have to go either with student grade or artist grade. Artist grades are a little expensive. Budget is not a concern, then I would say artist grade is the best. You could see the colors are more intense and very easy to blend. And else you have to go for student grade. They are like less than $10. And student and artist grade are like about 20-30 bucks. You should get a decent grade artist, decent artist grade pastels, right? So now let's move on to papers. There's a bunch of paper types out in the market. Let me show you a few so you'll have some idea. Okay, by the way, how do I know like it's an artist grade or student grade? It will be stated in the box. So I could see like it's very visible. It will say that it's for artist. So if it doesn't say anything like it's for artist, then it's a student grade, right? Okay, papers. I have a few types of papers here, but choosing paper is fairly straightforward. You just have to look for the weight, thickness and texture. For comparison, I have normal office business papers. They weigh about 20 pounds. The weight here is about 500 sheets. So 500 sheets of office paper, they will weigh about roughly 20 pounds. But we need at least 50 to 100 pounds for oil pastels. Of course, they have more than 100 pounds, but they are more for wet mediums like oil paints or acrylic paints. But for oil pastel, I would say anything about 50, below 100 would be absolutely good. But I personally prefer somewhere around 70 to 80. Okay. And it will be stated on the cover sheets. Now it will say like below the number of sheets, it will tell you the weight, which is like 70. This sheet is about 80 pounds. And the next factor you need to look into is the texture or the thickness of your paper. Those above 100, they'll be like very thick. We don't really need them. So you see, these are like 60, 70, 80 pound sheets, but the textures are a little different. They call it paper tooth. Now you can see them. You could feel them if you rub them. So the more the tooth, the better it would be for oil pastels. All right. So it's fairly straightforward. Look for something about 70 to 80 pound weight paper with a little texture or a little roughness in your paper. Right. Next, let's move on to tapes. They are pretty straightforward. There's only couple types. One is masking type. One is normal masking type. The other one is artist type. So masking tape, they will help you to hold the paper. They will do the job. But when you take out, they will rip the paper or they would damage the paper. But if you really want to frame your works, then I would suggest you to go for artist tapes. But they are a little expensive. Maybe like 2 or 3 rolls would cost you around $6-7. But if you want to frame your works, go for it. Else normal masking tape. I think I got this from Dollar Tree. I think like 2 or 3 rolls for $1. Right? But there are like a lot of techniques you can use with masking tape. If you are going to use like any of those techniques, then obviously you have to go for artist tape. So let me show you one of those masking technique. There's a lot of drawings out in my channel where you can go and watch if you have time. But let me show you one very important masking technique. It's my favorite technique too. Okay, for kids, especially for kids, if they do not want to draw stuffs, you can just cut those objects, or you can do it, if you can do it in masking tapes, you can just cut them from any paper. So I have a small bird branch. Let me show you how we use masking tapes with oil pastels, if you really can draw figures. I think the hair is chopped off. So we know how to draw a simple sunset sceneries, right? We use like double colors, vermilion and any kind of yellow. So let me just use that. So we have done this quite a few times. Then we can just blend them. I'm using cotton swab since this is like too small. Else I would have used cotton tissues. Right, then I will just take this out. That's it. Now you can just color with your pencil. I can use any color that you want. Right, that'll be super easy for kids if they don't really want to draw objects or draw anything into their oil pastel sceneries. You can just cut from any paper. It doesn't have to be from masking tape. They can cut it from any paper and paste it. But if it has more glue, then it might damage the paper, else it'll be good. Right? Now let's move on to different tools that we can use to smudge or blend colors. Right? Let me use a fairly simple one first. Our most popular one, I think we have used this a number of times before. That is tissue. Now don't use soft tissues, as I said earlier. We'll be using kitchen towel. You can cut them into like 6 or 8 pieces. Now you can cut them into small and fold them into small as possible. And then we will be using this side to smudge them. You can see you could smudge at the end. right? Next, I'll show you the same with blending tools. Now these are blending tools. They come in different sizes. They have a few of them. You can see they are of different sizes. They are like $3 or $4. So let me just pick one, then you can just blend them. You know, if it is paper, you need to give a lot of pressure. Kids might find it tough to hold. They might feel pain somewhere here. But if it is pastel, if it is blending stems, it's going to be super easy for them. They can just blend them without much pain on their hand, right? Next is cotton swab. So we used earlier for this, right? So cotton swab, we can really use it if it's for a bigger area. If it's something small and if you want to add details, then you can use cotton swabs, right? Then there's a fourth tool that's called color shaper. Now there's a number of shapers out in the market. So I have a few. Now you can see them. They'll be of different shape. The brush end will be of different shapes. So let me just pick one. You know, the best thing about this is it's more than just blending colors. You can create details with these. I can create shapes with these. I can do that. For example, if you want to do a grass effect, you should be able to do it with this. Now these fine edges helps you to make the shape that you want out of these pastels. See, you can do this with other tools. That's the best about color shapers. And next one is oil. Now you could use any non-toxic oils. So here I have linseed oil, or you could use baby oil. It will give you a paint effect, or like oil paint effect, and it'll be a lot easier to smudge them, right? But if you want to use this, you need to make sure you use a lot thicker paper. 70-80 pound paper may not help. You need to go a little more than that, probably about 100 or more than that, right? But they give a great finishing, like watercolor finishing. And the last one is finger. Of course you can use your finger, but if you want to use your finger, you need to make sure you go for either artist grade soft pastels, oil pastels or soft pastels. So you can, of course you can use your fingers to smudge the colors, right? Let's look into a few special effects. We did like a few sunset and water reflections, right? So when you want to do water reflections, you can't really do this. You can't really use the blue and then smudge them. Rather than that, you can apply the color that you want on your tissue or blending stems and use your tissue rather than putting the pastels on paper first. So let me show you. So you can apply them on the tissue straight away, or the blending stems or cotton swabs, whatever tool that you use. Apply on that and then you can straight away use them on the paper. They will give a lot more detail and smoother than these techniques, especially if you're going to draw waters or reflections on waters, right? And there's one more tool called Tortillon. You'll see this. It's just nothing but paper rolls. You could see the rolls here, and there'll be marks. So reflection on this will be great as well. I think you can see them. Let me add some red to it, right? You can see the paper rolls, so they give great effects. You can see them. It will be a lot different from the other tools that we used, right? And there's one more thing called post blending. In other words, some call it as resist effect. I use them to corrections to add more details. So resist effect is nothing but adding watercolors or acrylic paints on top of your pastel drawings, pretty much like oil technique. Okay, the other tool that we use is to do corrections. For example, we use correction pens, or we use white gel pens, or we use white acrylic paints. Let me show you an example where we could use them to correct our drawings. For example, if you draw a mountain, okay, but now if you want to draw a tree in front of the mountain, you can't really do that because you can use green on top of that. So on those cases, we will use either eraser, it could take away the black. The best thing is you should be able to shape them up. It's more like a clay. You could take away the pastel, or we can use correction pens or white gel pens or acrylic paints. Let me use acrylic paint and show you. Now, once it's dry, then we should be able to use other green or red, whatever color that you want to add, you can add to it. Yep, so those are the basic tools, and on top of that we would use sandpapers. Now this is basically to sharpen pastels or sharpen blending stems. Now they are just papers. Like once they get dirt, you need to use sandpapers. You could use like normal sandpapers or artist sandpapers. You just need to sand them out and clean them. Right, that's the purpose of sandpapers as far as oil pastels and blending stems are concerned. Right, okay, now let's move on to blending techniques. Blendings are like nothing but mixing colors, making the edge as smooth as possible, especially transiting from one color to the other color, right? Okay, let's start with red and white. So I'm using vermilion. So now I'm going to use white on top of this red to blend it. So it's a little dirty, so I'm going to clean that up. Okay, so when you blend with white, you can use the same like a horizontal ways. You have to use it circular motion to blend them. Right, in case if you find like a little tough to use tissue or the other tools to blend, you can use white. So they help you to blend, and at the same time you will see the transition from darker red to lighter one. Okay, now let's do it with black. Black is the toughest color, as I said earlier, so you need to be a little careful. And whenever you're blending dark and bright colors, you're supposed to start with dark for the most cases. Let me lighten this up a bit. I'm going to mix red with black. So that'll be transition, but black is not the best, but this is just for you to know that you could mix black with other colors too. Okay, now try to mix all three colors. Let me start with black, the most darkest out of these three. Then I'll go on to red, and then let me make it a little light, and then I'm going to use white. Right, so this is one of the ways you can blend the colors. Next we'll see heavy pressure blending. So there's a couple ways you can use pastels. One is heavy pressure, the other one is light pressure. Heavy pressure, where you put a little bit more pressure. You see there's no lot of gaps. You can do this if you are using neighbor color. So I'm going to use yellow on top of that. So you see, right, so they are neighbor color, so you can use them with heavy pressure. So I'm going to overlap. I'm going to start from here, so the transition will be a little smooth, right? So another way is to do it like light pressure. So if you do it like heavy pressure, smudging the colors or blending colors will be a lot easier. But if you're going to use light pressure, blending them will be a lot tougher, right? I personally prefer heavy pressure. And next is layering. So layering is the only technique where you will use light colors first and then dark colors. Let me use like 3 different colors. So I'm going to overlap with this. So we're going to layer it. You have to start with the lightest color, else you'll be starting with darker colors, right? The next technique would be dotting or stippling. It's nothing but just doing dots. It's a very straightforward technique. And scumbling is nothing but scribbling, doing it in small scribbles. See, you can just do small scribbles. Let me show you a small diagram that you can use, because you might be wondering where would I use these kind of techniques, right? Let me show you how you can draw a tree. With these 2 techniques. So I'm going to scumble first, scribble. I'll do it in chunks. Right, that's the easiest way, and then you can add a little dot to it. That's super easy way to draw a tree with oil pastels with these 2 techniques. Right, next is sgraffito or scratch technique or scrap techniques, where we will use light colors and then we will use dark black or any dark colors on top of that, and then you can just scratch that. You can use any sharp objects to do that. There's a palette knife. So you can use this to just scrap. You can create your own scrapbooks. And the last three, they are pretty basics for any drawings: shade, tint. Okay. For any drawing, the basic thing is to know your light and your shade. Now, for example, if you think your light is going to be here, then you need to shade these out, right? And your shadow will be somewhere here, right? And you can add a little bit tint here and here as well, and you can leave them more bright here. So if it is here, it's going to be the other side. If it is here, it's going to be other side. So it's very important you understand the light and shadow reflection of your drawings. For example, in this tree, if you want to add shadow to it, or if you want to add details to it, you can do it couple ways. Either you can add light colors or darker colors. I'm going to use a light color than what we have used, and going to create a 3D version or a shadow to it. So I'm assuming light is here. So anything on top or top of any branch or like chunks is going to be little brighter than inside, right? If you assume your light is going to be here, you can make this side more lighter than this side. If it's going to be this side, you need to make this side more lighter than this side. So you need to understand where's your light and where's your shadow and reflection, right? So drawing reflection is pretty straightforward. You just need to understand what type of light it is. For example, if it's going to be a sunset or sunrise kind of a shade, then it's better to use yellowish orange and whatever shape that you have, that will give that a shade or reflection feel, that will add a 3D effect to your drawing. The next, tint. There's a couple ways you can do tint with pastels. One, you can do your, let me clean this first. You can use your white first, and then you can use the actual color. Most of the time you'll be using this for water, so you'll be using blue on top of white. So that will tint the actual color. You can see the actual color here. Another way is use the color first, and then you can use white on top of that. Either way is fine. It depends what you are trying to create or reflect or tint. All right. So these are the 12 different blending techniques or mixing colors in oil pastels. Right. Next, let's learn a straight line or a curve with a single stroke. This is the basic for any drawing, not just for oil pastel, but it's a huge topic. But I'm just going to touch about only straight line and curve with a single stroke. Right, straight lines are nothing but just connecting dots, right? So we'll be just connecting dots. This is straight line, but it's not a single stroke, right? Because I just moved my hand, so it's not a single stroke and it's not straight as well. So there's a technique you can create straight line with a single stroke. Let me tell you how to do that. So the first rule is you can use your wrist. It has to come from your shoulder or elbow. So you can rest your wrist. Okay. So I'm not resting. There's nothing from my wrist. You see, my wrist is not moving at all. So I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. So it has to come from the shoulder or the elbow. So you can put like, it needs a lot of practice. You can just put like 2 dots, and then you can just keep doing this, and slowly you can bring down your pencil or your pastel, whatever it is. Now keep doing it, and then you will get it. You are not doing this anymore, right? Rather, we are doing it. This is a single stroke straight line from left to right. You can create about 8 different strokes with this. This is left to right. You can do it like right to left, top to bottom, or bottom up, diagonals. So you can create at least 8 strokes with this. It needs a lot of practice, but it's going to be the super basic for your drawing. Okay, so you need to keep practicing this, all different 8 strokes, right? It needs a lot of practice. Even like experts, they do warm-ups with these kind of single strokes, right? The next single stroke is what? Drawing curves. Again, it's all about connecting 2 dots, right? But for drawing curves, you need to rest your wrist. It has to come from your wrist. You're going to rest this. You're going to move your wrist. You're going to connect 2 dots with your wrist. You can see my wrist moving, right? Again, it's the same. You can like straight away do it. You can just do like a few times, and then you can slowly bring your pencil down, right? So for straight lines, it has to come from your elbow or shoulder and shouldn't rest your wrist. And for drawing a curve, you need to rest your wrist and you're going to connect it with your wrist, right? So these are the very basic stroke techniques for any drawings. Okay, if you can expert in these 2 strokes, you should be able to draw pretty much everything. And you can do at least like 10 strokes with curves, single stroke curves. So left to right, right to left, diagonals, bottom up, up down. So I can do it the other sides. So you can create at least 10 strokes with this, right? So 8 strokes with straight lines and 10 with curves. So these are going to be super basic for any drawing. So if you want to draw something, it's the basic. You need to practice these 18 strokes. All right. So now let's try to draw a tree with these 2 strokes, and later we will do it in our pastel paper. Now I'm just using normal office paper. So see, I'm going to draw the base, the trunk. So I'm going to connect them first. See, from here to here. If you can do like one stretch like straight lines, I ask you to do it in shorter ones. Okay, put your dots and then just keep connect them. So I'm going to do like one stretch, okay, and I'm going to do one more here, okay, and then you're going to take until here. You can branch them out, right? When you branch them out, it's going to be a little small, and then you can do it from here, right? We will branch them out from there, right? Then we can add leaves with stippling or scumbling techniques, right? And then you can make the base little big from here, and then we can add details. You can make the branches little big at the start and then make them small when they go up, right? Should be easy if you practice your straight line. Now let's do the same with curve. So because tree is not going to be always straight, right? So let me show you how to do it with curves. So I'm going to do a little curve like until here. Okay, I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to bend them again. So as you go, you can make them small, right? And then you can branch them out from here, right? And then it's up to you how you branch them out from here. It doesn't have to be single stroke. I mean long single stroke. You can just break them into small, then you can do it until here, and then you take it from there. Or you can do it one stretch if you practice them, right? There is another way I can teach you if you think drawing curves is a little tough compared to straight lines. Let me teach you this technique. You can raise this and you can just hold your pencil and you can just turn your papers. You know, rather than doing with your wrist, just put your pencil, okay, rest this, put your pencil down and you can just turn your paper, right? The curves will be pretty perfect. Another way, if you can use this, you can use your small finger. You can rest your small finger. You can rest your small finger, again hold the paper and you can just rotate the paper. You can do the curve. It's up to you, whichever you think is easier. You can use your wrist, or you can use this bone here, or you can use your little finger. If you think all three are not easy, there's one more technique as well, like a compass. Now you can use this. Now you can hold one pencil or pen, whatever, and you can just rotate and you can do a curve, or you can even do a full circle on freehand, right? So you need to practice these two strokes, about 18 of them. So you need to keep practicing them to start drawing or start to add drawings into your oil pastels sceneries, right? Now let's do over oil pastel scenery with these techniques. So I think it's time for you to take your papers out. Let me find one. Okay, I have one here. So this is my oil pastel sheet. I think it's about like a 70-pound weight. The textures are not great, but I think should be fine. So we'll start with this. Now you need a good texture paper if you're going to add a whole lot of details, but we're going to do a pretty basic scenery and we will try to add a tree to it. Now so far we have used only sceneries. We haven't really introduced much drawings to our pastel sceneries. But from today onwards, we will be adding diagrams. We will start with tree, then we'll try to add leaves to them, and then we will add flowers. So that's what we are going to practice for next couple of weeks. Right. Okay, let me move. All right. So let's do a simple sunset scenery that we have done before, but we will add a tree to it. Okay, so let me start with lemon yellow. So as we practice, we are going to do a curve first, right? I'm going to color it now. I'll do it slow So guys, what doing now can follow me. Okay, once you're done with this, then we'll be using vermilion number 10 and yellow orange number 2. Right, then I'll just use them like until here, like 1/3 of your paper, and then you can use yellow orange on top. Right, you need to be a little careful when you come closer to this yellow portion. And they are neighbor colors, right? So we can overlap. So I'm going to lighten this a bit. Right, so this is where we use this. This is heavy pressure and this is light pressure. So the more heavier it is, it's easy to blend, since we are using student grade. Right, I'm going to use yellow orange on top of that. I'm going to overlap them. Then take it all the way up. So let me take out the paper. And as we always do, we'll use red just to add more details. Right, so I'm going to use a tissue to blend them. Right, so we'll start with the darker color. So we need to be careful when we do closer to this yellow portion, or we can use different tools, like you can use cotton swabs or blending stamps if you have. Else you need to be careful if you use tissue. Make sure you do well at the edges so that you will get that frame kind of finishing once you take off your tapes. So I'm going to use cotton swabs. Let me show you I'll take it a little more closer and then you'll use cotton swabs. This is where like these kind of tools will be more useful. Otherwise, tissue should be more than enough. Right, now let's use a pencil and draw some line. And this side as well. Right. So I'm going to just color this whole thing with pencil. Okay, you might see my pencil might be little dark. I'm not using normal pencil. Okay, you know there's professional graphite sketch pencils. Right, so you can see the darkness. It's for 9H. It's very light. We use this to draw outlines. And then it goes all the way until 9B as the darkest that I have. We have even more higher ranges, but I use 9B. So this is the pencil that I use. That's why you could see darker. Let me use. This is 9H, the lightest. So if I use this, you won't really feel anything. Right? So this is more for drawing outlines. Right. So we are done. Now we will use single stroke arc technique now. So we're going to add some flowers to it. Okay. That's it. Right. We're just going to do a single stroke. Right. It's easy if you practice them, and you can just add some flowers to it or whatever you want to add to it to make it more nicer. Then you can add some. So again, it's the same thing, but you're going to make it like small arcs to give that grass effect. Right? So now this side we are going to use the same technique, and we are going to draw a tree. Right? So now I'm going to start from here. I'm going to take it all the way here. I'm going to make it a little curve. Okay, then I'm going to start here because the base need to be a little bigger than this. So I'm going to make it here. I'm going to make it a little narrower. Okay, then I'm going to curve again until here. And that's why it's important to learn all the 10 different curve strokes. So you see here, I start from this side, then it turn the other way. There will be places where you'll draw from top to bottom, or you'll draw all the different angles. So that's important that you practice all different 10 strokes as far as curve is concerned, and 8 straight line strokes. Right, from here I'm going to make a big stroke now. Okay, single stroke. Right, so now I can branch this out and then I can take it all the way there. Then I'm going to do it from here. It's up to you. You can branch out your own way. You can do this. Right, then we will add more details to it. Once you're done with the branches, then it should take at least 2 strokes, one curve to bring more realistic effect. Right, now we will start to color them. Then we will try to add a little more detail to it. If you do not have 9B pencils, I can use your black colored pencils. That will be a little thicker than your normal pencil. Don't use black oil pastels. So as you could see, the branches or even the trunk, as they go up, they tend to go a little narrower. You can keep adding branches. You can just make them random. So when they branch out, make sure you add a little detail to it. Right, so like here, so I'm going to connect them, make them a little big. So same goes to this branch. I'm going to make them a little thick. Then it will go thin. Right, so you can add more details to it, more small branches. You can make it more realistic. Alright, so once you're done, again we can use the same grass effect here. You're going to use the single stroke curves. as they go, you make them small. Right, you can take your time and you can add more details to it. Right, now we can add a little more detail or shadow or reflection to it. So I'm going to use white gel pen. I'm going to add to the end. Light is here, so I'm going to add this little light to this end, so this end will be darker. Just a little reflection. I can use orange yellow, but it won't be visible in the camera, so I'm using white. Okay, hope it's visible in camera. You can do the same for the grasses as well. They'll give a little more depth to your drawings, and you can do it on the flowers. I'm not sure how much it's visible in the camera. Right, we are done. So I'm going to take out the tapes. So as I always say, no matter what tape you use, it's always safer to take or pull away from the paper. Don't do it like this. Take it away from the paper. Shoot. That's it. So we have used oil pastel and we started to use the strokes that we learned today. And this is what we will be doing for this week and the next week. We just started to draw a tree, right? So tomorrow we will be adding layers to it using stippling and scumbling techniques. We will start to add more leaves to it, and then this Wednesday we will be doing this, where we will be using a little more ticks and details to our tree and oil pastel sceneries, right? So that's pretty much all for this week. I will see you all in the next session. Bye.